ours. We have a very special guest. We're really excited. But let me introduce myself. Like I said, I'm Tony. I'm in a 2002 Toyota Highlander with 150,000 miles on it. How about you, Pastor Brandon?
I am in a 2015 Audi A4 with 50,000 miles on it.
My name's Morgan. I am in our 2007 Mazda CX-9, and I don't know how many miles are on it. A few.
And last but not least.
Well, I'm Shayla, and I'm in Jacksonville, Florida, and I'm in a 2018 Mini that probably has 50 or 60,000 miles on it.
Wow.
I think I've lost track. I've lost track of how many miles I put on it.
You do a lot of driving.
I do a lot of driving. I'm out and about a lot. I'm bivocational, so I'm a sales rep. So this is my little car that I put around town in.
Wow.
So,
Shayla, why don't you tell them what you do for work, where your ministry is, and maybe expand on the bivocational part?
Okay. Sure. So I live in Jacksonville, Florida, and I'm a sales rep for a genetics company that is located in San Francisco, Florida. I work for Invitae. So we specialize in hereditary genetic testing.
wow.
And I call on the oncology and the women's health market here in Jacksonville. I'm bivocational, of course. So when I'm not talking to clients and trying to help patients get the testing that they need and resolving issues, then my head is in the books. I'm in class actually with Pastor Brandon in Asbury, working through a D-Min program and preaching and leading. And just recently started a non-prof, Community Without Walls, and part of that non-prof is a very, very small, very tiny little congregation that we meet on Thursdays and Sundays. It's called. Did I answer all the questions?
No, that was great.
That's
so
awesome.
You and I met at Asbury, became friends at Asbury. We're in the same, I forget what they call it. We're in the same group. What's legacy group? We're in the same legacy group.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, legacy group. Yep. We're in the same.
So
legacy
out of curiosity,
group. That's right. And you know what?
No, you first.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. I was gonna say I'm excited actually, to receive the phone caller from you to talk about this opportunity, because I had the chance to interview you for one of our papers last year about your church. And so I'm excited just to hear what you guys are doing there in Washington and Seattle, right? Seattle, am I saying that right?
Yeah,
Seattle.
Got it.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Well, we haven't had church for 4 months, so we don't even, we switched to only online 4 months ago. This Sunday is when we officially relaunch our live gatherings. So I think if we talk like next week, I'm either going to be really happy or really concerned, one or the other. I don't know yet. So we'll see how it goes.
Time will tell.
So what are you writing your dissertation on?
Everything that's going on with me right now is apropos. My dissertation is on the lack of advocacy coming out of the African American churches that are sitting in impoverished urban or inner city neighborhoods. So the climate of the times right now.
Wow.
I feel like, here I am crafting this dissertation right in as things are starting to pop off. So I think that this my dissertation and what we're going through in the country right now and by extension throughout the whole world right now is really much, gives me an opportunity to really look at the thoughts that I've started to have concerning making changes. How do you affect change? What does the African American church now need to do to be a advocate, to be a reconciler in these communities. And then we have all of this that's going on. So it's, I mean, not just with the issue with race and those conversations, but also even during with COVID. My personal belief, if it's okay to share that, is that okay? So my personal belief is that we need to be out of church, to be the church outside of the church. So I actually stepped down from a role as an assistant to a pastor at an AME, African Methodist Episcopal Church, that is wholly Methodist, but all African American, right? I stepped down, was in the process of being ordained, down because I felt God saying, this isn't it. You need to be outside. There's so much more that needs to be done outside of the church walls. Some of our churches sit in really poor neighborhoods, and the churches are filled with suburbanites, right? People are like me. I live on the outskirts of Jacksonville. I don't live in inner Jacksonville, in the inner city. I don't live in those areas. I live on the outskirts, and we're often driving into these neighborhoods from outside, and we go into the neighborhood, we have our church, and we come out. And that was what God was showing me is with everything that's going on around the neighborhoods, why isn't the church more active, more involved, more a part, an integral part? And so then the question of relevancy came up. So I feel like, my dissertation is right in the midst, of what we're seeing kind of unfold within the country. All back to
All right. I think we lost you on that last line. Say that last line again.
Did you? Oh, okay. I was saying that I believe that it's going to, what we see unfolding in the country today is actually going to call us all back to task as believers. It's amazing. One of the key anchors for my dissertation was the Good Samaritan. And looking at how, what does it mean to be a good neighbor? What does it mean? Yeah. And so one of the key points in my dissertation, as I'm writing through it, is the church being a good neighbor? You're in the midst of the community, see what is going on in some of these communities.
So you said your part of your dissertation is you're trying to understand why African American churches aren't more involved in these communities. What was your conclusion?
Yeah.
Did you have a reason?
Well, I haven't gotten to the research part. All I have right now, because I'm slow in this process. I started my dissertation all the way back over last year. So I'm just finishing out chapter 2. So I'm walking through it very slowly. I have some assumptions. But that's all that they are, right? They're assumptions. And I'm interested to see what and how things pan out once I do the actual legwork of the research, is to see kind of what comes out of it. If the assumptions that I have are going to be, if they're going to shake out after I do all the research and meeting with the local pastors, talking with the congregations, talking with the communities that are around these churches that's here in Jacksonville, it'll be interesting to find out what is prompting this lack of advocacy. Yeah. And most importantly, if after the meetings that we have, if it will spawn some activity, more activity from the churches, or if they're going to kind of still be status quo. So it'll be interesting to see what comes out of this dissertation and the research.
Wow. Well, before we dive into our deep topic here, I just wanted to remind you, when I heard you preach in that class, I kept affirming, you need to pastor, you need to have a ministry, have a church. So when you told me a couple days ago that that's what you were doing, for what it's worth, I was so proud of you, because you are anointed and gifted, and I'm excited to see how that develops in the years to come.
Thank you so much, Pastor Brandon. And I can use all of your prayers, because someone with a thriving church now with a second location, that all of that comes about with prayer. lots of prayer and just keeping your ear. I call it keeping my ears to the ground to hear what God is saying, and keeping him in the forefront of every step that I take. So your prayers are much appreciated, and I appreciate, your support. That means a lot.
So we are here to learn, and we really value your insight and perspective. I am curious, when you heard the news of what happened to George Floyd, what was your immediate reaction? All right, we lost you there for a second. Is that
Sounds
me,
like
or is that you, Tony, or what?
No, I think it sounds like Kayla or Shayla's cutting out.
Am I?
Okay, I got you now. Go ahead.
That's better.
Okay. Am I okay? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So my response is one that I have quite often anytime I hear about something that has happened that's not okay. Does that make sense? Are you guys
absolutely.
still there?
Yeah.
We got
okay. So when I heard about, George Floyd and then watched the video, my heart hurts. And it hurts on different levels. It hurts because, from being an African American, I do know that there is a disproportionate level of violence that will happen when there's interaction between police and African Americans. I have a grandson that is 14, that is probably 6'3", probably 210, 215, maybe 220, cream puff. But to see him in this, right? So I am even concerned about a 14-year-old. But aside from that, having to be concerned, and look at me, when I drive around, I'm to some degree concerned, because you don't know until you get up on me that I'm an African American female because of the way that I wear my hair. So there's definitely, that is a real thing that is known, understood within the African American community. But then secondly, it is a human to human. We are all human beings. We are all people, and no one wants to be mistreated. I don't want to be mistreated. I don't want anyone else that I know to be mistreated. My friends, we all want to be respected and treated well. And so the thing that hurts, I think, me, is, God, what needs to occur in society today, in America today, for people to, when we look at one another, we don't make any kind of judgments other than that is a human being just like I'm a human being, and I want to treat them the way I want to be treated. So it goes back to that, to the Good Samaritan, and treat others the way you want to be treated, and the Good Samaritan of being a good neighbor. It hurts to my heart, someone who's I love God with everything that's in me. And he has shown me in some of my deepest, darkest moments that there's pure love there. And I want everyone else to feel that, because I feel like if we could learn to appreciate and love one another, as we are all human beings born in the image of God, that we can give love and receive love, and not ever look at one another as if someone's better than the other.
Amen.
So those are my initial thoughts, and that is my continuous prayer. God, what do you do? How do you resolve this? How do we walk through this? What can I do? What is my piece of the puzzle? Give me the words, Lord. Show me what to do. So that's kind of how I've been moving through this.
Sure. So growing up, can you think of times, and I'm sure, unfortunately, that it's happened to you, where you've experienced racism?
Well, yes. I actually grew up, this is South, right? Florida is South, but there is a South, right? North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia. I grew up in South Carolina. I grew up in a rural city. South Carolina, that's probably 20,000 people, with the majority of the people living out in these unincorporated areas. And in fact, my parents live in an unincorporated part of Lancaster County, where, you know, people are talking about the Confederate flag and all these images. I mean, I grew up around them. That was a part of my life. And for the most part, things were okay. You know, we were extended neighbors to one another. You wave at each other. I mean, that's one of the things that most people who come through those rural towns will say, that is so crazy how everyone waves. That's true. But you kind of grow up with a knowledge, with a unspoken reality about what life is and what life entails. And so I grew up knowing, you know, I grew up being taught, you gotta press in, you gotta learn, you gotta be smart, you gotta keep your mouth shut, I grew up with that, learning that to be cautious, to be careful, you know, about situations and circumstances I found myself in. I mean, I remember, believe it or not, in second grade, a teacher that I had that separated the children by color. I remember that happening. We were on the playground and she said, I want to do something. And she separated us. And she had a group of kids who were white and a group of kids who were black. And she played with the white kids and she left us on our own. So I know what it is. I mean, I've been, you know, offered a job when I was 18, when I was still trying to go to school and work my way. I was offered a job when I was 16, still in high school, because the person thought I was, you know, older, 18. And it was a McDonald's job when my mind was always somewhere else. McDonald's when I'm 18, I'm not going to be here. I'm going to college, you know. So I grew up with it, you know, when I was in the Carolinas, and it's a very real part of life. It's, you know, that was the way it was.
Yeah.
So Shayla, I've been talking to a lot of people who, you know, it's probably it's the same world, but, you know, two totally different worlds in the same aspect of things. When you talk about probably what's going on in Florida right now and what's going on in the South as compared to what's even going on up here in Seattle. What's your perception of what's happening within the church, like the body of Christ? Like, what do you think is being revealed to the body of Christ as we're having our eyes open to the very realities that racism is still real and still alive more than ever?
I think, and you know, ever since Pastor Brandon reached out to me, I've been thinking about this discussion and thinking about, you know, from a church perspective, what is it that I feel we can do? Can you guys still hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, good. What has settled in my spirit as I've been thinking on this is the same thing I guess I've been thinking on ever since God called me out of the church that I was in. How do we take individual responsibility for our thoughts, our responses, and our reactions to people who are not like us?
Yeah.
I really believe in my heart that it comes down to taking individual thoughts, looking at ourselves, thinking, you know, when those thoughts come through, taking that thought captive and pulling it out and saying, what is this? And start to have those deep conversations about what is going on the inside of us. And then God is so good, lifting that thing up to the light of God and beginning to have those conversations. I think that if we begin to individually look within our hearts, because we are all believers, we are all professing believers, and we understand the standard that God has given to us about loving our brothers, as we find in 1 John 4. And when we look at loving our brothers, then Jesus comes with the Good Samaritan and pulls that thing out even further and said, loving your neighbor as yourself. And then John 15:13 telling us, you know, no greater love is this. So we're called to a standard of love. And as we are called to a standard of love, then it puts the onus on us as believers first to demonstrate that to the world.
Yeah,
and
so
secondly, to be able to, when things come across us that is not, are you guys still there? When things come up within our minds, within our hearts, when we see or hear things, to really bring that thing up and say, what is this? And to start to dialogue with those things as if to God, so that he can help us, because he's always there, willing and ready to help us with what we bring to him. Right. I think what we see going on, not just in the South, but across the world, is a real call for the church to be who she is supposed to be, and to image who she's called to image.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's so good. That's so good. Well, I asked the question because it's such a global issue, right? It's not. You can't just look at one particular group of people and say it's because of this person, or it's because of these people over here, or it's these people over here. But I do feel like the church is positioned very specifically to speak and be a light to this topic, maybe more than any other group of people. Yes. Because of everything you just explained. It is exactly what we're called and commissioned to do. I love your perspective on that.
I think you're spot on. That's our calling. That's what we're commissioned to do. And I really honestly believe, and so in my context, what I do is teach the Bible.
Yeah.
Period.
Come on.
Yeah.
We have to get everyone back to understand what it is that we say we believe in. There is a swath, even a generation or two, that is lost to what the Bible really says, what it means, and really being able to discern it clearly. Because we know, with anything, people, we're humans, we live in a fallen world. We are under the stain of sin, so we tend to do things that are flesh driven. We tend to take things and twist it so that it fits our paradigm. It fits what we want to say. And of course, the word has been used in that way as well. But when we have a full and an honest and a very clear understanding of what the word says, then we can debunk those things that have been put out there that are not consistent with who God is, who Christ is, and who we've been called to be. So I think I agree with you spot on, Morgan, about that. We are in a wonderful position to herald the truth, but I believe that it's going to be with a very keen eye on teaching just the Bible. And that's something that God spoke to me when I was standing in the pulpit at this African American church. He said, teach my sheep, feed my sheep. Not any fluff, not any happy stuff, but just give the word, because we are in some different times. And I know this sounds crazy, but I see even the COVID. I believe COVID was an opportunity for us to initially be pulled out of the churches, to reset. It was almost like a reset, if that makes sense. It was almost like, he closed the doors of the church so that we can have this time to reset and to rethink and to reprocess.
That's a good point.
And, you know what I'm saying? It was like, let's shake the tree a little bit, and let's make things happen a little bit. And then on the cusp of that, now we have this real issue about human life, humanity. So I hope that answered your question.
Shayla,
Did that answer your question?
I couldn't agree more with you. In the beginning, when you said the church needs to be outside the building, could not agree with you more. Do you? And I would love to hear from a scholarly standpoint, as you and Pastor Brandon are obviously on a higher intellectual level than I am. Do you think with today's issue with racism, also within the church, finding out that there are members of different congregations coming out that we didn't even know were kind of mildly racist, or maybe just flat out racist? Do you think it's a lack of biblical literacy right now, that they just, maybe you're right, they just haven't been in the Word, they haven't studied the scriptures, maybe they've been focused more on morality or fluff, but would you say that there's that lack right now within the church?
I think that there is definitely, I think biblical illiteracy is a huge part of it. I think more than anything, because the word has been turned upside down to fit, ideology. And, I come against that. I mean, I come up against that all the time. I have someone who's very close to me who has this different way of seeing things from the word, but it's because of what they've heard and the way that the word has been used to further an agenda, a racist, a prejudicial agenda, right? So it's about understanding what we're dealing with, right? Looking at it and saying, okay, I understand what you've heard or have not learned, but here is the reality of what it means. And then it's not only about us teaching the word of God into communities again, but it's going to require us to model that as well.
That's it.
So even in the midst of, knowing that we are walking along with others who don't yet understand who God is, don't yet maybe understand what it really means to be a believer, you're going to have a little bit of tension there. But it's going to take the believer, the person with the heart of God, to be patient, to be prayerful, and to be vigilant, to continue to let that message come through, not just in the teaching, but in the way that it's modeled in the community, if that makes sense.
It's good.
Pastor Shala, we got to wrap up the show, but I want to affirm in you what Pastor Brandon affirmed. Just getting to know you with the short time. By the way, we're bringing you back. I'm letting you know from now. And we're going to eat a donut.
We're calling you again, Taylor.
I want to know if you want to move to Seattle and be an exec pastor. That's what I want to know.
Yeah, come out here.
I need an exec pastor.
We need you. But I just want to affirm on UCU, you are an anointed woman of God, a minister through and through, and just our time together. I just want to thank you for your truth, your honesty, and ways for all of us to grow and learn in this season. And just thank you for being honest. You're phenomenal. You're a phenomenal leader, and you are doing a great work. So thank you for being with us today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Shayla,
we're bringing you back. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Shayla, we're gonna be praying. We're gonna be praying for your dissertation too. I really, as you were talking about that, man, I really feel like God's gonna use that. He's gonna use that in some big ways. So I'm praying for that.
Thank you so much. And you guys, it has been an awesome opportunity to be here. I'm excited about what you're doing in Seattle. I know that you're going to go forth and do well. I know that God is good in all his glory, and the blessing is amongst you and Pastor Brandon and his staff. I'm happy to come back, and I apologize for the intermittent internet signal. I'm sorry.
You're good.
We've been doing this for several months. We're used to that.
You're not the first time.
Oh, okay.
Hey, Shayla,
yes, sir.
I have enjoyed our growing friendship over these last couple of years. My hope is that it really does continue, because it has been really fun to hear your heart, get to know you, and especially your passion for this topic. It's helping our church be better. And our desire, honestly, is we don't just want to ignore what's happening in the world around us and be in our own bubble. We really want to be part of the solution and help make our world, it sounds really cheesy, but we really want to make the world better for our kids and our grandkids. And thanks for taking the time to help us. And I'm serious. If you want to move to Seattle, we need to talk more. I wouldn't want to do that to your family, though. So,
Thank you, Brandon. Thank you so much, Pastor Brandon, Pastor Morgan, and Pastor Tony. God bless you all.
Thank you so
and
much.
I'm going to keep my ear to the ground for your church, okay?
All right, do it. I will see you online as we interact in those classes for sure.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Right.
Thank you.
See you guys.
Well, there it is, folks. Thanks
Bye-bye.
for watching. We appreciate it. Have a great week. We'll see you guys later.